Welcome back to another edition of PD and P-Dubs Unscripted. Look at this, 2 weeks in a row.
Whoo, man, we're knocking it out, buddy.
Man, we're getting back to what we used to, getting that podcast in shape.
That's right. I mean, golly, this is fantastic. It's exciting to be back in the studio.
Yeah, we enjoy doing this. Just time got away from us. I don't think we expected to be gone, missing episodes that much.
Not at all. And, it's the same thing with anything else. You stop doing something, you're going to fill up that time slot with some other activity. And I think that kind of happened. And so then the prospect of getting back in the studio was daunting because it's like, I don't have time.
Right. Any of those, like anything in your life, you get in that routine. Like we were going like gangbusters, working well and doing them weekly. And then we got out of that habit. And then.
Well, I think it was important that we did take a break. And, it was the Lord's doing, however long that it needed to be, so that we could come back fresh, recharged, ready to go, and be on top of our game.
Right. Well, you always bring an A-plus game. You bring a better game than I bring.
About that.
You're like the number one starter. I'm like the fourth starter in the rotation.
You're like Kyle Hendricks, man. You're the steady Eddie, It's just...
I prefer Mark Burley.
Early. I know you. Yeah, Mark Burley's a good one.
He was a steady, knew what you got with him. Mm-hmm. Now we're boring all these people that don't know baseball.
We're already sidetracking.
But we thought we could come back because, the last 2 days, we're recording this on Thursday, October 17th. The last 2 days we've been up at Lake Delavan at our pastors' conference, which was always a nice time to get up there and look at some of God's beauty of his creation there at Lake Delavan around Lake Lawn Lodge and just get to spend some time with some brother pastors and catch up and listen to some speakers.
Yeah, get some good learning in, a lot of deep thinking things. This particular conference, we had two main speakers, Harold Sinkbeil, who is Reverend Dr. Harold Sinkbeil, who happened to be one of my professors at Fort Wayne Seminary, and he taught a class on pastoral care, which is what he led us through. And then we had someone from an organization called Multiply, and his name was Nate
Gulzo. Guelzow.
Right.
Sometimes I have trouble spelling out things when I'm looking right at them.
Yeah, so he's been a pastor for about 21 years, if I remember right. He's been
in this area,
and then also in Tennessee.
And I think maybe Florida.
It seemed like it. And he really has a heart and passion for connecting with non-Christians.
Right, and I mean, I know you missed the beginning part because you had another kind of meeting you were taking care of before Nate started to speak. But when he was talking, my first mind with what he was talking about was like, it's the one.
Yeah.
Because he said something to the effect of one of these people he was talking to that was like in this Multiply class or whatever they want to call it, module. I can't remember. But he's like, this person's like, I don't have anybody in my life that isn't a Christian. Everybody,
right.
And he kind of said, who in your sphere of influence isn't a Christian that you can kind of live life with and share about Jesus when the kind of opportunity presents. And with this person he was talking about, they're like, yeah, I got nobody. And he's like, well, tell me about your day. What do you do? And they're like, who do you interact with? And the lady brought up, oh, well, I drive this person who's going to counseling that was involved in human trafficking. She's, done with being trafficked. And he's like, well, is that person Christian? Well, I don't know. And he's like, there you go.
Yeah.
And that opened up the conversation where I can't remember if you heard where he said that, so one day she's like, well, do you want to go to the park and just talk a little bit? And that started all these conversations.
Wow, very cool.
So I'm like, to me, that sounds exactly what we've been talking about for the past, I think, 3 years now with the one of just, and even prior to that with joining Jesus on his mission with Greg Finke, where it's just kind of living your life, the people that are part of your everyday life, or maybe not everyday, but part of your regular life that you have an opportunity to pour into, whether it is just care and compassion, and that opens the door to share about faith.
And you talk about opens the door. We could go back even farther for some of us here at Emmanuel. Ron Hutchcraft, A Life That Matters. I mean, he had a threefold prayer: Lord, open the door, open my heart, open my eyes, that kind of thing. Or no, Lord, open a door, open my heart, open my mouth. And so give me an opportunity to, share, Christ with others.
Right.
So yeah, it's been this building thing, and so when we hear things like this, it's like really tickles our ears and says, hey, this is another perhaps building block that we can dive into to get a greater breadth of helping our people actively live on mission every day, seeking interaction with people in their lives who are not Christian.
Right, because that's what it's all about as Christians. We all have that. We've all received the Great Commission. It wasn't just for the disciples there at the end of Matthew and the end of the Gospels, but that's given to all of us to go and make disciples of all nations. And it happens just in everyday conversations. Like, you don't have to go on a mission trip outside the country to share about Jesus. You can do it in your own neighborhood, your own yard. Like we were kind of talking before recording, where you're talking about the pictures with the guy taking of the comment. You don't know the guy's faith background, but you were kind of pouring in a little bit, which opening up with sharing about God.
Yeah, what Pastor's referring to is last night I went out to actively try and find that the comet that's out there, and I happened across a gentleman who was he had a big camera with a big lens on a tripod, and so we hit it off, and he was asking me if I've ever seen the Northern Lights from a previous week, and we chit-chatted it up about that and how beautiful they were, and he was using certain terms to describe the beauty of the Northern Lights, and I was using other terms to describe the beauty of the Northern Lights, and kind of connected us, and I was kind of like just in a way, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like the heavens opened up, and then like, oh, some of them look like angelic, and just kind of seeing how he was picking up to it, and he was like, yeah, that would be I could see that. So for whatever that it was worth, we connected on some beautiful event in the sky and had an opportunity to kind of share maybe vocabulary about those things. And I never mentioned Jesus, but I said, isn't it great, God's glory and his creation, and he was kind of going along with it, but I don't know if I'll ever see him again, but he did text me about some of the pictures that he got, so we'll see. You just never know.
But yeah, and a lot so that this was about care and reaching into the post-Christian world. And like what I really liked about Nate's stuff was he said, some of the stuff I have early on was, now mission has sent you. You are sent. Christians are the solution to ministry in the post-Christian world. And sent Jesus followers doing stuff. And so he talked about this idea about like marketplace Christians. And one of the things he talked about with them is the responsibility of, I have to go. Jesus commands me, like what I was kind of hinting at earlier. But what I really liked, and I think this is maybe about when you were popped in, was common excuses to responsibility. And I was like, man, how true is this? Common excuses for people like to say, I don't think I'm not the right person. I have a fear. Like the first was fear. Don't know how to. I don't think I can because I'm an introvert. I'm too busy, but I'm really saying yes to too many things. I already do other things for the church. I'm not on a board or a committee at church. That's the pastor's job or another church member's job. I'm not called. It's not my gifting. And I'm like, yep. I think we both have pulled, and anybody has heard those kind of excuses.
Yeah, I just called those up as well. And fear is a top one. Like, people are held back by fear of like, I don't know what to say, and the next one, don't know how. And, I think we all could relate to those things. And
well, I think even, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth one, I'm too busy, but I'm really saying yes to too many things. And that is, I think, a perfect description of our culture and the world around us is like, we are overscheduled and just so overcommitted that we just feel like we can't add one more thing. And that's why I think we gravitated to joining Jesus on his mission and the idea of the one, because it's not like you're adding something onto your plate like, I have to go and do this. It's just living your life, And when those opportunities present itself, you're already doing that. When it comes to your one, you're already probably hanging out or spending time with your one. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's going out of your way to like, oh, I got to go hang out with my one, or I got to connect with my one. You're most likely already doing that on a somewhat regular basis. And just how are you going to make the most of that time?
Right. And that's where he got to objections to access. Like, first there was the objection to responsibility, and the access is kind of where like, oh, I've already got too many things going on in our lives. And his slide read, with regard to like maybe being a missionary going across the seas. I can't be a missionary overseas, so I can't give the kind of access to others God would want. Or I don't have time for new relationships in my life. Like, ooh, man, I could see people saying that. Or I can't add one more thing into my life, was what you were getting at. And then with regards to hospitality or having people over, inviting people over, my house isn't ready. I don't have the gift of hospitality. Or just trying to reach, maybe reach into a small group of people. There's too many people to reach. It's overwhelming. So there's that apathy that we learned about.
The journey of following
Jesus is, it's hard, and you don't get the results that you hope for. They don't come in the time frame that you hope for, so you get apathetic, like, this isn't working, this is too hard, and so you give up with apathy. And then the final one, I don't know where to start. I mean, everybody can relate to that thing. It seems to be too big.
Well, that was like we were talking to Pastor Pete Imlaw a little bit about some of the stuff that he does at Lombard with his church, and he was talking about, how they go with other churches and they do like yard work for people who are about to get fined in the community, and he was showing us pictures of the one yard that they worked at, and we were both like, where do you even begin with that?
Right. It was such a mess, so overgrown, and it was one person living by himself, and just it's evidence of how people become overwhelmed. They can't even maintain their own homes. So all these things about objection to access or responsibility showed up in that example.
Right. And so it's just like that, like, it's that old saying, like, how do you begin to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's with anything. Like, I think about, like, when you're busy, maybe at work, or you have a ton of things for work, and it's like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Where do I even begin? Just start with one thing and just slowly start knocking all that stuff out. Right. And this kind of ties to one of the things I thought was interesting too with these like marketplace Christians and all this stuff, was also permission. I'm allowed to go. Mm-hmm. And the roadblocks to permission, and not theologically trained, don't have a dramatic story or conversion. Everything has to fit in perfect in my relationship with Jesus before I can engage. What I want to do has to fit into my church's vision, what my pastor wants me to do. And that was one of the things, and I think all the pastors in the room agreed when they're like, people feel they need the pastor's permission to go and share and witness about Jesus, when we're like, no, just go do it. You don't need our permission to go.
If you have an idea of a way to gather people together, go do it.
Right. And if you need the church or something, ask us and we can coordinate that, but we're not going to say no.
Yeah. So, fine. We'll be there to listen and encourage and all that, but don't feel like, you can't because you don't have access to your pastor or whatever, or you just don't know if it's fully baked. I think that's the other thing too, is like, if you have an idea, and you've got some sense of like what you want to try, go for it rather than waiting to like have it all planned out, because I think that's how God operates in the moment. Like, he'll take your living in the moment and trying something, and he'll bless it. If it's of him, he'll bless it. An example would be kind of like the gathering place. So we decided, let's go find a place to do this. People, well, where are you going to go, Pastor? I don't know. I was thinking of the ice cream shop down the way. Well, do they have room? Did you talk to them? No, I haven't. But, let's, keep figuring it out as you go.
Generate maybe a list of places, and then we can go, which I think that also goes to the next point I had in my notes about permission. Permission unlocks missional imagination and risks two things often overlooked for engaging people in post-Christian culture.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, what unlocks that missional imagination, and that's what it takes. Like we were just, you're having some of our staff with Dr. Calendo, like talking about the working genius. And that was one of the things on there is imagination. And it's like, you have people that have that imagination, but then you have people that I tend to fall more in on that line, like, tell me what to do and I'll go and do that. And so you need both of those things. And that's when you work together, you maximize those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have an idea and you have a group of people who are willing to give it a go, God's going to place, the right people around you to carry it out, which, for like the gathering place, we even had to pivot a few times, based upon location and how we were connecting with people. So we tried it a different place, different day, and then COVID hit, and then, we got to reimagine a different way.
Right.
And all of this.
And even how we were going to do that, because I know early on with the COVID, like I think the first time I went to your house and we did it at your house, and then I was sick. And so it's like, well, how are we going to do this? Because I don't feel comfortable going to your house because I don't want to bring germs in.
Yeah.
And I was like, is there a way to do Facebook Live where we can both be on there? I knew how to do Facebook Live like just on one. And then I saw a classmate of mine at seminary be on Facebook Live with another person in different rooms. So I was like, hey, what are you using? And then that opened up that avenue. And so it was just one of those, just the different things clicked to make it happen.
Yeah, so whatever the idea is really up to you. And that's what Nate shared a lot of, like, feedback from people that he's worked with. And, it could be just... what was one thing? There was something that they wanted to help homeless veterans in, and so what was the thing that they endeavored to do? Well, they endeavored to find furniture for these veterans who needed, better quality furniture in their homes, or if they did find a home, you got to furnish it. So they didn't find all the answers, but they had something that they could help the veteran as they got a new place to live, to have chairs, table, bed, that kind of thing. So this group of people, they just endeavored to kind of find that stuff and hold on to it and then pass it along. And, it wasn't like rocket science.
Right, and then he talked a little bit about the 5 thresholds, which I know you were engaged.
I really like that.
And I believe he came, let me look this up, because I know I purchased the book on Kindle called I Once Was Lost. And there's a couple books with this title, so I got to make sure I get the right authors. Because, just don't want to... So let's see here. Let me switch to... digital orders here. But the book is called Where the 5 Thresholds Come From. I Once Was Lost, What Postmodern Skeptics Taught Us About Their Path to Jesus by Don Everett and Doug Shoup.
Yeah, so there's thresholds, or you could call them, I don't know if you call them barriers, but they could be. I think we talked about barriers before. But a threshold is like the point where you pass from barrier into cracking through, right? So what is the threshold from distrust to trust? So if you're talking to someone about your faith, if they don't trust you, they won't listen to you. So how do you move from distrust to trust? So there's this relational aspect.
Right. And then it was kind of interesting. At that point, he opened up to the idea that when they did, I think it was Barna Group did research about trusting in pastors, where 75% of people that are non-Christian.
79% of people who are non-Christian don't trust pastors.
Well, that was a little humbling there. And
it was 29% of Christians don't trust pastors. ouch.
Yeah, so that was one of those like, man, I hope I've never done anything to.
Yeah, we're an untrusty sort. And then the next threshold was going from complacency to curiosity, and then meandering to seeking, and closed to change to open to change.
That must be speaking to Lutherans.
Yeah, I think so. He had stars around that one for some reason. And then finally, the fifth threshold was entering the kingdom. And then he kind of expanded on from the first threshold, distrust to trust. And if I can find that one.
Was that the knee-jerk reaction?
Knee-jerk reactions.
So yeah, so that he's like, defend. Like sometimes, we feel like we need to defend, but he's like, the reaction should be pray. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you got a bruise, like you got a little bruise because of what somebody said, and learn is the other better reaction. Or to avoid, maybe we should try to bond instead of avoiding that person to see where probably you have those things that are that you agree upon. Mm-hmm. And then instead of condemning someone, we should listen to them. And this one, I don't know, this one seems like it's hard in our culture these days. Instead of arguing with somebody, welcome them.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is life stuff, not just Christianity. This is just like human behavior, loving your neighbor, trying to get along with them, being kind.
Right.
And so we see it all the time on social media, especially in the politics.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially this time of year with the presidential election, like all this, we're on opposite sides, we can't get along. But it's like, even for opposite sides, we can pray for that person. Mm-hmm. We can learn something from that person. We might not agree, but we can learn. Mm-hmm. We can bond with them. Like, just because we have different political opinions or even faith opinions, we can still get along and bond.
Right.
And instead of condemning them for what they believe, listen to them. Because, and they kind of talked about this. I can't remember I think it was Dr. Sinkbile, about like everybody has a story. Mm-hmm. But he kind of talked, I think it was Sinkbile, about how, we've lost our story. Mm. And like, instead of condemning somebody, we don't know their background or what got them to that point.
Right.
But if we actually listen to them, we can maybe understand them better and why they feel the way they do about different things, whether it's faith, politics, just life in general. But when we listen to them, we can say, okay, I might disagree, but it's okay. I understand where they're coming from. And instead of arguing, how about we welcome and just be kind to one another? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I thought this was so applicable to many areas or arenas of our lives, right? Like from a conversation between a Christian and a non-Christian to, as you're bringing up, someone in a political discussion or someone...
Even like a spouse or significant other, like you can have all those sorts of things come up, but how about you try these things in response?
Because, there's three levels of conversation that I learned from someone. The first is superficial. How's your day? Good.
How's the weather?
Fine. That's easy conversation. The next level is opinion, and that can start to have differing thoughts, right? Like, so if someone shares their opinion, someone can say, all right, I'm listening to your opinion, but I don't fully agree. And there can be a deeper level of a conversation. And most people are willing to enter into that opinion thing. The last one is the foundational elements, that things that are core to you that are immovable. So like if you were to have a conversation at a foundational level, core level, then, disagreement really can be a difficult thing. Because you're so like, I'm grounded. This is an immovable thing for me. But yet, if you can engage in a conversation at that level with someone, you can begin to bond. You could begin to learn. You could begin, to welcome and understand.
Right. You might not change your opinions on those topics, but it doesn't mean look at how many people that you're friends with or I'm friends with. There's things that we disagree on.
Absolutely.
Even you and I disagree on things, but it doesn't affect how we do ministry together or the friendship.
Right. And a lot of times amenance is one of them. I don't know if that was, avoid. It was number 3 rather than avoid, bond. I think of like one of my friends that I've known since college, and we've never really talked politics. And I think I shared something, this was years ago, I shared some post on Facebook, and boy, did he get upset with me. And, you know, especially in my call and my position, I don't know how you could post something like this. This is untrue. And I'm like, oh boy, I really sparked something here. And I could have fired back, you know, and I'm like, well, I didn't mean to offend you or anything like that. I just found it interesting. And so there was just this, okay, you know, we're good friends, but I hate to say it, we kind of began to avoid that topic with one another. And so, I mean, I learned something about him. Now, maybe that learning helped me, okay, don't go there because we're on polar ends, but we don't really bring it up much.
Well, it's kind of like that old adage, you know, don't talk about religion or politics.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of created where we're at probably now in the world, where people are afraid to maybe talk about their faith because, like, well, I don't want to offend somebody.
Yeah.
And it kind of, like, to me, that kind of fits a little bit what I preached about this weekend. Sometimes out of love, we got to have those hard and difficult conversations, especially when it comes to sharing our faith. Because if we say, well, I don't want to offend them or it might ruin the friendship, well, it's like, would you rather ruin the friendship and have that person, you had the seed plan where it grows into faith, or just never have that conversation? They never have that seed of faith planted, and then they have not the outcome we want to see for the afterlife.
Yeah, and with regard to a faith-oriented conversation, maybe walking into it, listening and trying to bond and understand, you might see some similarities between the two, like worldview and the Christian view, that you might be able to connect and agree on.
Correct.
And then you can build on that. You know?
I think some of it too is not coming across as judgmental, because I think, what was that, David Kinnaman's book Unchristian, like the 6 views that non-Christians have. I think one was judgmental.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some conversation with my one, I'm like, hey, we might disagree on this, but understand this is where I'm coming from, my background, my faith, and just sharing this. And I'm like, it doesn't change my opinion of you or any of that stuff.
Right. It doesn't change like our identity, and I think Dr. Sinkbell kind of talked about identity as well, and identity and purpose. I know Nate kind of talked about it as well. So it's like, I'm not looking to change your identity or your purpose in life. I'm just trying to understand. Yet we, you know, our identity comes in Christ, and so, you know, sometimes we're so quick to defend and be argumentative that we're shutting down the listening.
Correct.
And that's not really, I mean, I can get to like defending your faith, but like that's where we have to be careful, because if we begin to like put up the walls, then the conversation over, you're never going to get the opportunity again.
Correct.
So if you're fluid with the discussion and open, and maybe even use some of their terminology, then you're kind of creating a connection. Right. And a trust and things like that.
Right, and I know we're kind of getting strapped here on time because you got another thing, but do you want to share the one thing that you shared that you wrote down with me on the last?
Yeah, I mean, it was the discussion with Dr. Sinkbell was about, like, we, in our lives, we plant seeds and we water them, and it's God who makes them grow. And I don't know, God kind of gave me something in the moment about how, like, relationally, very often we will look to people who are difficult in our life or challenging or, and you could even say harmful to us, but, you know, God places us around them. And in that vein of, like, planting and a plant growing, you know, he gave me this. He says, does the plant concern itself with other plants or weeds? Does it look to the gardener, giving its complaint as to why competing or destructive plants or weeds are allowed in its proximity, challenging the plant's very existence to fully grow to its liking? Or doesn't it just grow to the best of its ability to have, I wish I had my glasses, its roots digging deeper into the nutritious soil to give it life, even if the weeds are actively choking it out. It depends on the master gardener to care for it by pulling out the weeds and continuing to daily till the soil, water, and give proper light so that the plant may flourish. So it is a whole, looking at like nature just does its thing, and looks to the master gardener to kind of help it flourish and grow. Whereas sometimes maybe we focus our relational thoughts more on what's wrong with the other person who's bothering my ability to grow. Let God take care of that person, and you just keep digging your roots in Christ, and He'll allow you to flourish. I don't know. So I don't know if it made any sense, but yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, so I think, we're going to wrap up here. So you can see that we did learn some stuff at our conference. We just don't go and hang out and, we get to learn some things and take some good notes and
try to.
And hopefully this helps encourage you all with your faith and journey with your one or somebody in your life that doesn't know Jesus. So thank you and God's blessing.
Dubs, unscripted.